Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the appointed hour of 7 o'clock and time for the November 18th edition of the Lexington City Council. Thank you all for being here. And with that, call the meeting to order, and I'd ask all to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all very much. There's one thing I would point out. At our last meeting, we did agree to table the discussion and any vote about Hall's drive-in request, and we neglected to put that under unfinished business, so we're going to push that to December because it wasn't part of our advertised agenda. But just for those keeping score and wanting to make sure that we haven't forgotten about that, that will be on our December 3rd, I believe it is, or December 2nd agenda. Next we have presentations, the status of major activities and projects, and we welcome Jeff Martone to compete with the girls basketball game and give us an update. Yeah. That's fine, yes. Just be sure to hit the button and make sure it's red. There we go. You're live.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight's presentation will cover a myriad of topics. I'm going to start out with some past due VDOT projects, some of our programs we've applied for funding recently. I'll touch on some of our engineering studies that are active for FY22. And then lastly, I'll hit on some of our actual construction activities active for FY22. So it's kind of a long list. If any time during the way you got questions, please just jump right in and ask them. First off would be we'll dust off the files of some of the previously awarded VDOT monies. The first would be our Smart Scale project at North Main Street, Complete Streets Entry Corridor project. I think at a value of $2.8 million. I have received an update on that, and this information is probably 4 to 6 weeks old. But the current timeline I was presented is preliminary field investigative work will be done this month. Public hearing will be held March of 22. After that, final drawings will be produced. The project will go to advertisement in September of 23, and construction would be predicted to end sometime near the end of calendar year 24. And that's pretty much all the information I have on that project to date. Any questions on the magnitude or scope of that project?
Jeff, the public hearing, that'll be a time for folks that are interested in learning what the design of that and what the expectations of the modifications to North Main Street will look like.
That's correct. Yes, sir. And
a time for residents to say, we think that the bike lanes, there shouldn't be one on each side, but we'd prefer to see one on one side. VDOT will take in that information, and then they will make their decision ultimately of how it will be designed.
Yes, sir. That's what I would anticipate. I have yet to see any preliminary drawings for the project, but I would assume going to a public hearing that they would have some conceptual plan sets to present the public and then receive comment at that time.
Very good. And that's anticipated in March of 22.
That's correct. It's coming March.
Terrific. Thank you.
The other one, if you remember, we also awarded State of Good Repair funds for the superstructure replacement of the Lime Kiln Road Bridge. I don't have much to report, but the good news is that I received a Zoom meeting invite from VDOT for November 25th, this November 25th. So hopefully at that time I'll get some type of timeline when they're looking again to start survey, construction drawings, and then when they anticipate advertisement. Next, any questions on those projects?
Will that be before or after dinner?
I don't know. Some of these you're probably aware of because you've already done a resolution of support, but recently Public Works submitted 6 revenue sharing applications there for FY 27 and 28 funding. All 6 pertain to our bridges, and I'll list them very briefly. It was the West Nelson Street Bridge, the Moses Mill Road Bridge over the Mill Race, the Welsh Park Bridge, the Thornhill Road Bridge over the tributary of Sarah's Run, Ross Road Bridge, and the Diamond Street Bridge. All these projects were either programmed in the next 5 years or FY22 CIP, other than the West Nelson Street Bridge that was unprogrammed. I think in future year dollars, the aggregate sum applied for is about $6 million. If we got one of those, I'd be happy. Usually bridges rate they're the last tier that funding goes to through the revenue sharing program. So I'm not very optimistic, but it doesn't hurt trying. Also, we have not set the final application is due December 3rd, but our West Nelson Street Bridge is eligible for state of good repair funding. Sufficiency rating dropped below 50 the last inspection, so we're applying for that as well. We've fended off many questions, so it is definitely on VDOT's radar. Again, the applications are due in December 3rd, I believe. Then lastly, we had 2 sections of roadway that were eligible for primary extension paving funding. I did final application on those, I think, the week before last. And those 2 locations are South Main Street from City Line to Jordan Street, and Thornhill Link Road from basically Country Club to the bypass intersection. Those 2 applications totaled about $750,000.
And that's just for paving, it won't include new.
That's just for resurfacing. That's all primary extension covers. The good news is we've been very lucky with primary extension paving funds. We've received probably $2 million in funding in the past, so it's relatively easy money as far as VDOT funds go. Next on my list here is engineering services for FY22. I think most of you are aware we have a citywide storm drainage inventory and capacity analysis underway. This study will do asset inventorying, so we actually assign inventory designators tied to the water body that the storm drain system outfalls to. They will collect information on pipe sizes, materials, inlet types, manhole types, so forth and so on. And lastly, they'll survey each structure as far as northing, eastings, and elevations to rims and inverts. So it's pretty comprehensive. Civil Consulting Group is performing the study. They have subcontracted a lot of the survey to Dukes, so you'll probably see a lot of Dukes vehicles in the city recently. They've started the survey last week, I believe, and they'll have a couple weeks doing the survey. The overall assessment will be complete sometime this coming spring. And that study is a cost, I believe, is $127,000.
That was programmed in.
That was.
Any expectations on when we receive the report and next steps? Will that be a...
It depends what the findings are. They're going to do a Manning's equation analysis for capacity, so it's not, a full hydraulic drain line model, but it's a very good indicator of what storm drains may be surcharged during, 10-year storm events, 25-year storm events, and so forth. So it would give us some hot spots to look at and put in our CIP for replacement, say concurrently when we were doing like a Jackson phase 1, phase 2, or at least before we proceed to paving, so we're not tripping over ourselves.
Right.
The other aspect as far as the inventory going and tying the inventory designators to water body outfalls is currently we're not an MS4 operator for DEQ because we're under the 10,000 populace threshold. But who knows in the future if that's to change. At least we'll have it. We'll have most of the information in our GIS to be able to better be able to manage such a program in the future.
Is that kind of a study something that other small cities, towns would be undertaking, or is this kind of a study, a kind of an inventory, something that we're doing because, I mean, what?
It was my call, David. I don't know what other cities and towns do.
Okay, well, my point just is that it just seems, I mean, it's a very expensive study.
It is.
It's helpful, but I do follow the expenditures of other localities, not as close, but I just haven't heard of it. I mean, people are not spending money on that kind of study, and I just was wondering, again, the rationale a little bit, just background. I mean,
I would say that when we sat down to meet with Dukes to come up with how we're going to assign inventory designators to all our structures, they had very good recommendations based off studies or work that they're doing for, say, Stanton and Wadensboro, either recently or right now. Now, both of those entities are MS4s, so they're a little behind the 8 ball on doing this work. Whether they're doing capacity analysis, I don't know that, but I know that Dukes is doing the very same survey for many of the localities around our area. All right. Next is our Lime Kiln Road, Alum Springs Drainage Project, Improvements Project. That was budgeted this year for $34,000. Basically, we're designing permanent curb and gutter, concrete entrances, and actually pipe storm drain improvements. That would be the north side of Lime Kiln Road from Alum Springs to the McComb Place entrance. Basically, that would put in permanent infrastructure to the temporary asphalt berms and entrances we did last summer. That project survey is complete. Plans are probably 50% done right now. I owe the design engineer some test pit information. I have my own crews test pit utilities that the storm sewer will be crossing, so there's no conflicts. But I would say easily in this coming spring we'll be complete with that. And that is currently shown in the FY22 CIP to go to construction next fiscal year.
Jeff and Mr. Siegler, if I may, I think if you reflect on that $125,000 study and the cost of this very minor project that Jeff just outlined, it's really a good idea for us to understand what we face problematically in the city, because we could easily spend 34 here and there, get to $125,000, when we should be spending $60,000 or $100,000 on a major project, on a major concern. I mean, to me, that's why we aggressively are looking at this.
And the other aspect of that is, you know, if you look in our GIS, we do have most of our drainage infrastructure shown, but it's pretty much symbolic. Not all the information's there. Definitely no grade data. So if improvements are justified at the end of the analysis, at least we got not all the topography, the topographic survey done, but at least we have the basic information in there to avoid some future costs and survey of our storm sewers. All right, I'll move on. We are working on the Jackson Area Water and Sewer Improvements Phase 1 project. The engineering fee for that is $437,000. That's all inclusive. That's survey, design, bid phase services, and also construction management services. That is probably along the lines of what we had paid for the Diamond Hill project and others of that magnitude. That project will cover all water and sewer replacement or improvements from West Nelson to White and from Jefferson to McLaughlin. Survey started on that project this week. Will easily be a year in design on that, so probably next year at this time we'll probably have 100% level drawings. And currently that project is shown to go in construction next fiscal year. Any questions on that one?
Give me the street parameters again. It was,
West Nelson to White, Jefferson to McLaughlin.
okay.
Can I ask, first off, I live near Limekiln, I live on Allen Springs, and I know my neighbors on Limekiln will be thrilled to hear that. I'm just wondering, and I really appreciate all the work the Public Works did on that project to help these folks. Have you recently gotten many complaints about, like that last storm that we had back in October? Did they run into flooding at that thing that you heard about, or?
I forget the homeowner's name and address. The second one down from the intersection down Limekiln, the berm was breached for a brief period during the most intense part of the storm, but not significantly.
Okay, got it.
So they did have some overflows. The rest of the yard stayed high and dry, at least from roadway water.
Yeah, that's good. Anyway, thank you so much for all your work on that.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that.
And back to you, Mayor, as far as the project, just similar to our Diamond Hill, those are nominal boundaries for the project. You know, we'll have to upgrade at least sewers somewhat outside of that fringe just to get to the next structure upstream and so forth. Any other questions? I think I mentioned this at one meeting because I think David hit on it. We did have plans developed this fiscal year for the Evergreen Place East Nelson Street signal. We're planning some improvements there. Engineering fee was $21,000. Improvements include new signal heads, new control cabinet, and we're looking at use automated pucks to replace our loops. So they're actually buried in the pavement and send real-time signal to the control cabinet. So the plans are 100% complete. The engineer has not given their opinion on probable cost yet. When we get that, I told Jen that I'll have to work with her to see if we can afford the actual construction this fiscal year using our State Street payments because it is eligible for that. And they were used to fund design as well.
Jeff, do you have a range that you would share on what that costs? Because I mean, I know that.
I'm not the best signal man, but I budgeted $100,000. That did include design.
Gotcha. A lot of times people, citizens are interested in replacing or upgrading the cabinets or the stoplights, but it's really expensive.
And that's, most of that is wire strung. When you start looking at actual fixed structures with mast arms, you could look at $250,000 per signal.
Wow. Thank you.
And lastly, on that topic, we've had 5-year term contracts with 3 different consultants. They expired this past October. I was able to complete the next request for proposals for the same basic services, and I had Janie put that on the website yesterday. Proposals are due December 17th. All right, on to construction projects underway. Some of these are complete, so I might be rehashing the past. Citywide resurfacing. I'm estimating, I don't have all tickets in, we'll probably close out about the $485,000 price range all in this year. That included, do you want me to read all the list of streets or just ones we mopped up here recently? Okay. That, as you may or may not be aware, we were able to add on to the original bid Enfield Road, which they were able to do with their first MOB. We were also able to add on Estill Street, the Brubaker basketball court, and the skateboard park. So all those were completed yesterday. And at the last minute, we decided to add in some improvements to Washington Street right at the intersection of Jefferson. If you recall, we had 3 blows consecutively last winter, and we had about 30 foot of pavement that was, although not falling apart yet, was heaved up in the air about 1 inch. So they were able to mill that down and resurface it yesterday, today. So they are now officially done. All right, the project in everybody's mind, Diamond Hill Water and Sewer Improvements, Phase 1. That was bid at 5.2 mil. Our current budget is 5.8 million. Again, the project replaces all water and sewer from Washington Street to Diamond Street and from Lewis down to Randolph Street. And there are some outliers from that boundary. We finally broke ground on that project in September. As of invoice number 2, we are approximately 15% spent down. The contractors installed 2,000 lineal foot out of it, 8,000 total of water main. And they've only installed 600 lineal feet out of about 10,500 lineal feet of sewer projected for the project. Most of the work has been on the Massey Street water line. Some of the sewer work has been along, I believe it was Cincinnati and the Tucker vicinity. Materials are still hard to come by, but they've never had to stop work since September. These usually get a shipment every 2 weeks, and it allows them to work for another 2 weeks. But definitely, it's a lot easier to get the ductile iron pipe for the water. The PVC for the sewer is a little bit harder to come by right now.
Jeff, is the project going smoothly from the contractor's standpoint? He hadn't had disruptions or rock or...
I won't soft pedal that. I would not say smoothly. The contractor has been doing just fine, to be honest. What we have found is that a lot of the lateral connectivity in, say, sewer submains that are documented in our GIS and that are very painstakingly drawn in some of the field books from the 1980s and 90s. Some are 100% accurate, some of them are totally inaccurate. We've had to go back to the drawing board for some sewer redesign along Massey Street because the sewer at some point came out of the front of the house and there are cleanouts and surveyors picked them up, but they're no longer in use. It actually comes out of the rear of the house at a couple of homes. So we're working through those. That's not fault of the contractor. Looking ahead, I've already told WRA, our design consult for the Jackson Phase 1, that I'll probably commit personnel when we get a little further into the survey of that area. That we'll probably have to knock on doors, go in people's homes if they'll permit us, determine where their laterals come out, if have to push fish tapes down and put our locator above and make sure we get it right the first time. But that is just a problem with very old neighborhoods. Currently the project, the Diamond Hill project, is, as of today's meeting, looking at late summer 22. I think that's optimistic. I think probably it's going to be a late fall time frame. Any questions on Diamond Hill?
How much, excuse me, how much are the sewer errors and redesigns costing extra?
I don't know. They discussed it today. I don't know the net trade-off between what we're emitting, what's shown on the plan, and what they'll have to go to. But if I just had to guess here tonight, maybe $35,000, somewhere in that ballpark. All right, next project is our Providence Hill sewer lining project. Right now, all in budget with MSA I&I funds is approximately $1.2 million. I had a long discussion with Mr. Allagood on this project before everybody came in. This project, the intent is to repair and line and rehabilitate all the manhole structures in the Providence Hill neighborhood, and also, for clarification, some parts of the Birdfield area that flow to the Sarah's Run interceptor. Approximately half the Providence Hill, I'll remind council, neighborhood flows to the golf course and the Woods Creek interceptor. This is meant to not only cure or assist with I&I removal from our system, but open up capacity for the VDOT property. You're probably aware all CCT camera inspection was done in that work zone. I think they concluded everything in September. It took them about a month to get all their file data together and give us a list of, here's the pipes in that area you need to fully replace. Here's the ones you need certain select point repairs. Here's the manholes that need to be relined themselves or completely replaced. We received that. Their total estimated budget with their bid unit pricing is 1.6. So evidently we'll have a shortfall. So my marching orders to them is to start in the upper reaches of, that would be the Birdfield area, say Shenandoah, McCormick, and work your way downstream until we run out of funds. We may realize some cost savings. I was telling Mr. Allagood, part of that budget is about 1,000 feet of full sewer replacement. We may be able, once I get the utility crew to full staff again, self-perform that work. But it's not as simple as just digging up the existing line and putting a new one in. We'll have to reroute it. The most problematic areas at the intersection of Thornhill Road and Welsh Park. And that's got a significantly flat slope. We've had to replace a section of that in the past, as Chuck's aware. And that portion actually runs under the Welsh Park culvert. And I remind council that culvert's due to be replaced in the next 2 to 3 years in our current CIP. So we'll actually have to look at alters. There's no sense putting a new pipe in the culvert, then have to tear out again for the bridge project. So we'll have to look at an alternate corridor for that. They have got their marching orders to proceed. Their crews are in town now, but they're still doing manhole data collection. They're supposed to actually start putting buckets in the ground this November 29th. They show a 2 to 3 month timeline on repairs. Again, I think that's optimistic. I think that we're looking probably late spring to complete that project. Any question on that? All right, moving on. This fiscal year we have the Morris Creek Dam Crest improvements shown for at $110,000. We're gonna, as I've told council before, we'll self-perform that work, so I don't think we'll be anywhere near that. We have applied for the alteration permit with DCR many months ago. We finally received that middle of this past October. My opinion, it's a little late in the grass growing season to go up there and try to add, 4 to 6 inches of dirt to 900 linear foot of crest. We'll be maintaining erosion control for many months, so I'm going to defer self-performing that till sometime in the spring. Richardson's Park play equipment, as you're well aware, we replaced the 3 to 5 year old play equipment in the park to the tune of about $34,000 for that equipment. That is in place now. Public Works will add a little bit better concrete sidewalk connectivity in the upcoming weeks, maybe months, but essentially that portion of the project is done. Any questions? And lastly, Jim wanted me to touch on this very sensitive topic, although it's not a Public Works topic. I was asked to give an update on Columbia Gas's Nelson Street project. It's not very good news, to be honest. You may or may not have noticed there used to be a lot of Primoris trucks and equipment out working with Columbia Gas. Primoris has lost that contract. They've gone with Miller Pipeline. You've probably seen this, the project's been relatively static this past week. It's because Miller Pipeline is undergoing 2 weeks of gas company training before they can permit install. So my best estimate is probably beginning in December, we'll see Miller Pipeline back on the project. They have 19 services still to replace as part of that project. And their guesstimate is they should be done with that if all goes well before Christmas. The more important topic is their permanent paving repairs. Southern Casting is who they subcontract the repairs to. They're due to be in town January. I told them they'll be lucky if the plants will be open then. So we will see. But they have been given instruction to remove their steel plates in the road prior to snow events, because that could be very problematic. And they've been put on notice they're going to have to babysit their coal patch throughout the winter until they can get their permanent patches in, and that includes after each snow removal process, because we'll probably be ripping a lot of it out. So I wish I had better news on that one. Any questions other than the Colombian gas?
How is all this summarized in that report you have in your hands? Is it all?
I can give this to the city manager for distribution. I had a couple of things I inked in at the last minute, so I can annotate those in the morning and get it to council.
That'd really be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll certainly have it available for the press, but we certainly don't have ideal meeting conditions this evening competing with the basketball, but thank you for that extensive report. It's good to be reminded of all the things that Public Works has going on, especially in the throes of shortage of staff. I know it's been a challenge and continues to be a challenge. So thank you to the folks that are here and getting the job done, and for your leadership and getting them taken care of. The trash is still getting picked up and leaves are getting picked up, and all the normal business is still carrying on with all of this work. And lastly, I would just say, Estelle in particular, Houston, Taylor, all smooth sailing. So there's smooth roads in our future. We have to bump along Nelson for a little while, but I think all in all, these improvements will benefit our city and our citizens and make for a better product. So Jeff, thank you. And you're welcome to depart and enjoy your evening, or join us if you'd like. But thank you for those updates and for all the good work. Next item is Citizens Advisory Board. Invite Chief Green to address council. Welcome.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor Friedman, City Council members, City Manager. With your approval, I would like to start a Chiefs Advisory Board. The purpose of this board will serve as an avenue of obtaining feedback from a diverse cross-section of our community on relevant law enforcement topics, such as use of force, body-worn cameras, mental health concerns. This will provide increased transparency in our police procedures, practices, and policies with input and recommendations that we receive from our community board members on how to improve our police services and enhance their quality of life. The advisory board is completely voluntary, with no board members having power or authority to investigate police, criminal, disciplinary, or personnel matters. Upon your approval, we would publish an overview of the roles and expectations to serve on the Chiefs Advisory Board with an application form to be filled out by December 29th. Once selections are made for a board comprising of 5 to 7 community members representing a diverse group of residents, business owners, school leaders, faith-based clergy, and/or college students, I anticipate the first meeting to be held in late January and quarterly thereafter. Thank you for considering the implementation of this advisory board, which will provide our police department with a candid community perspective on public safety and how we can better integrate community-oriented police services. And I'm available for questions.
Do members of council have questions for Chief Green?
I'm curious, what sort of term do you envision for the board? I mean, how long would people serve on the board, do you think?
Did you say a charter?
No, term, like.
Term, a 2-year term. It would be a 2-year term for each board member.
Okay, got it. And they would report, and how frequently would they meet?
We would do it quarterly, 4 times a year.
Okay, and they would meet with you?
With me.
With you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, great.
So just to clarify, it's not a citizens review board, which is completely different and has powers and so on. So it's an advisory board. And my question would be, have you done this previously when you have been chief of police? Is this something that when you
Yes.
got to Lexington, you thought, I would like to have this because I've had it elsewhere?
Yes, sir. I did that in the city of Portsmouth.
Leslie?
Are the applications live on the city website or soon to be?
We already talked to Ms. Janie Hostetter. Once you guys give the approval, we can put it on the city website tomorrow, and then I will contact print and media outlets for them to advertise as well. And everything could be submitted electronically.
And is it for Lexington residents to apply?
So it could be Lexington residents, Lexington business owners, any faith leader in Lexington that has a church or a parishioner in Lexington, as well as any school administrators in Lexington or college students in Lexington.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, there's no Lexington residency requirement, but doing business, attending school, et cetera.
Yes, you have to have some kind of vested interest in the city of Lexington.
Very good. Mr. Ziegler?
So are you looking for us to make a motion to approve this, or a tacit agreement that you can do this without a motion and a vote? I mean, you're informing us that you plan to do this.
I am informing you, but I would like to have your vote to say that you are all in agreement with this.
So a nodding of heads, or okay, Jim's shaking his head, so you're not looking for a motion.
What I would suggest, if there is a council member that has an objection to the chief moving forward with this would be the time to speak up. There's no need for a motion. It's just acknowledging and supporting the chief in this endeavor in that fashion is the intent. Because there was nothing on the agenda that said we were voting or that this is a policy or other ordinance that we would be looking to implement. Questions? Yes.
I just have an observation, not necessarily a question. Earlier, when I began my term, I was definitely an advocate for a community review board, a police oversight review board. I still am, on record or whatnot. And I note recently that the city of Virginia Beach has done that as well. They've done a community oversight. They've established one. I think it's a good thing, but at the same time, it appears to me that Lexington isn't ready for that level of investigative authority and whatnot, but Lexington would be a good candidate for the police chiefs citizens advisory board as you've presented. So I would very much want to go on record in support of that to begin the process to have that happen. And who knows, maybe eventually we could do an oversight board later. But for the time being, not, and the Citizens Advisory Board for the chief would have my support.
Thank you.
I would say that the advisory board would definitely have my support. The Citizens Review Board would not, just to clarify, just because of the financial considerations and the fact that we're too small a town for something like that. But this, I'm totally on board with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes, I just need to clarify that the topics that will come up are topics that the members will be presenting to you, or you selecting topics, and this has nothing to do with cases, active cases. This is just general topics.
Absolutely. So it'll be a two-way street. It'll be the opportunity for the community to bring up topics that they're interested in as well, that we can discuss. We can discuss our policies, look at policies, and any national topics that are happening, that if they see something around the country and they're interested, what is the policy of the Lexington Police Department? What would you guys have done in this situation? We can make it a roundtable discussion, but it'll be transparency on both ways. But at no time would we discuss any ongoing investigations, and especially no personnel matters with the citizens. You're welcome.
Any other questions from council? Renew, if there are no objections, Chief, we support you in your mission to create a Citizens Advisory Board to assist you in being more effective as a police department, and look forward to the folks that will volunteer to accomplish that.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Next item on our agenda is public hearings, ordinance 2021-09. And I call on Jen Bell to walk us through the budget amendments.
Good evening, thank you. Mr. Mayor, council members, other distinguished attendees. So tonight I am requesting that City Council adopt ordinance 2021-09, incorporating the budget amendments for the first quarter of fiscal year 22. Most of these items are self-explanatory and have been discussed in previous meetings, but there are 2 points that I think are worth repeating. The City of Lexington has received so far $4,484,823 in American Rescue Plan Act funds. The full amount of this money has been carried over to fiscal year 22. However, we're not looking for any appropriations at this time. But I would like to note, we do anticipate $2,387,911 will remain in fund balance as allowed under ARPA regulations for revenue replacement. Next, we are carrying forward $1,541,262 of fiscal year 21 budget surplus into fiscal year 22. I'm only requesting tonight appropriations for $1.3 million of that money, and the remaining $241,262 will stay in fund balance for us to appropriate at a later date. Can I answer any questions, or would anyone like me to address any of the other requests within the ordinance?
Council members have any questions on those details? Hearing none, proceed.
Okay, so I apologize, this is my first time with a public hearing, but do I sit down and let the public say something, or what should come next?
Yeah, good question. You can step aside at this time.
Okay.
I would open the public hearing at 7:43 and ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak to this topic. Don't stray too far, because I'm not sure we'd have anyone. Seeing no one that wants to speak to this topic, we'll close the public hearing at 7:43. And
So at this point, would I just ask for approval? Okay.
Mr. Ziegler.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-09 to incorporate the budget amendments for the first quarter of FY '22.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just encourage council to be mindful, socking away more money in the general fund. I know that we've had David and Leslie working with city staff on potential projects and getting us this far. And of course, the $800,000 for the new ladder truck is a significant piece, so thank you. As for a roll call vote, Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Ayers.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And Jen, make the same offer. You're welcome to join us, but you're also welcome to depart if you'd like. Next item is consideration of the minutes that were part of your packet for November 4th work session and regular council meeting. Unless there's an objection, we will accept those as presented. Hearing no objection, they are approved. Next is citizens' remarks and comments. Welcome. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak to City Council? Mr. Harwood. And if you could ceremoniously state your name and address for the record.
I'm Doug Harwood. I live out in Rockbridge, Mass. And as you well know, I've been coming to these meetings for God knows how long. Anyway, I don't want to prolong this for 2 seconds, but I would suggest that tonight's lovely game next door might be a good excuse to try and move these meetings back into the county building. I know you all like to show off new city buildings. We've all seen them. And thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate you being here and sharing your insights. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening? Hearing none, we'll move into the consent agenda. Acknowledge receipt of the abstract votes for November 2021 election. And I welcome council's consideration.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I have a motion and a second, and ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Strawn?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Reports and commissions. Blue Ridge Resource Authority. Mr. Smith?
Quick update. Fred Dudley was made Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Resource Authority at our last meeting. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Main Street Lexington. Ms. Strawn?
Sure. Main Street Lexington met on Tuesday, November 9th, and we welcomed Trevania Cottrell to the board. And Christmas Parade chairs Eric and Chandra Mogensen gave an update. The Lexington Christmas Parade will be Friday, December 3rd at 6 p.m. and the theme is classic movies. If you'd like to help with the parade, use the Just Serve app to volunteer. So you go to justserve.org. And Santa's mailbox will be in Hopkins Green throughout the Christmas season. Candlelight processional and lighting of the community tree is on Friday, November 26th. Love Lex Lotto is Saturday, November 27th through Christmas Eve. Small Business Weekend is November 26th through 28th. The Jingle Bell Run is Saturday, December 4th. The Rockbridge Symphony will play Christmas carols in Hopkins Green on Saturday, December 11th at 3 p.m. And Trinity United Methodist Church will have their handbell choir performing at the Courthouse Square on Saturday, December 18th at 2 p.m. So in case you can't remember all that, this great summary is in this week's insert for the News Gazette, and I'm sure it will be in the December Advocate, and you can find it on the Main Street website. But there really are great events going on downtown all throughout the Christmas season. So get down there, shop, go eat and take part in some of these great events. And the design committee and a team of W&L engineering students are exploring several mid-block crosswalks on Main Street based on recommendations from the 2013 Downtown Enhancement Plan. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
What's the deadline for entries for the parade?
Yeah, right, tomorrow. And that's available online at the Main Street Lexington website.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strawn. Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission met on Thursday, November 11th, and we approved 2 site plan applications from the Lexington School Board to install outdoor classrooms and shade structures at both Waddell and Lilburn Downing. We discussed our approach for planned unit developments, and it looks like we'll do that a little bit differently than in the past. We're talking about probably having a PUD for mixed use and then maybe another one for residential area. Right now, in the past, we've had one It was mostly geared towards residential, but it was just one type of PUD. In the bike and pedestrian plan, the consultants are meeting with stakeholders, and that survey will remain open until those stakeholder meetings are completed. So you can still go to the city website and take part on the bike and pedestrian survey. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Strawn. Hearing no questions, we'll go to the Regional Tourism Board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regional Tourism met yesterday, and we spent most of the meeting evaluating the Tourism Sponsorship Program Round 2 applications, and these are for events occurring between January 1st, 2022 and June 30th, 2022, and how to allocate the roughly $10,000 in funds available for this program. And we were able to approve grants for 5 events: Natural Bridge State Park's Kids Fishing Day on April 9th, the Rockbridge Area Health Center's Bull and Oyster Fest on April 22nd, Lime Kiln Theater's Evening with the Milk Carton Kids on June 11th, the Moy River Fiddlers Convention on June 17th and 18th, and the Gravista Bike Race on June 25th, 2022. If they haven't already, these organizations will be contacted with the grant details in the next few days. We also spent a lot of time discussing projects that would be eligible for and a good fit for Virginia Tourism's American Recovery Funds program. Collectively, our region is eligible for $210,000 in funds. That's $40,000 for Lexington, $30,000 for Buena Vista, and $140,000 for Rockbridge, making the total funds $210,000. Deadlines for that program are planned submission from tourism by December 31st and 2022, and actual spending of the funds has to occur by December 21st, 2023. And so we have a little bit of time, we're continuing to look at projects that fit that nicely. In regional news, Tourism's Buena Vista representative Christina Ramsey mentioned that Buena Vista was devoting $75,000 of their $1 million in community development block grant to a building facade improvement program in their downtown historic district, and they have 16 building owners who have submitted applications. So downtown Buena Vista may be getting a bit of a facelift, which is nice. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Dennis, you mentioned, was it Gravista Bike Race?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, it starts at Glen Morey Park, and Gravista, I think, is a contraction of gravel and vista, so it's backcountry roads, gravel roads with nice vistas. So they're going up on the.
I mean, like Tour de Pont would get maybe 100 bikers. Is this something?
Well, they get two. That's why we were particularly enthusiastic about this event, because the last time they did it, they pulled about 200 bikers, and they were typically people from outside the area, which is really what we're looking for these events,
Sure.
to bring people in. So so 200 last time. We're hoping they'll do better this time.
Terrific.
Okay.
And Buena Vista will be quasi-hosting that if it's at Glen Morey?
Yeah.
Terrific. And the HVAC has been replaced?
It has been removed. It is gone finally. So parking lot's
some
clear.
peace and quiet for the neighbors and the tenants.
Yes, absolutely.
Great to hear. Thank you very much. Raro, Mr. Ziegler. No report. Thank you for your brevity. Ms. Alexander, Threshold.
Planning Commission and Threshold held a joint session yesterday evening to start the dialogue about community housing needs, as well as strategize opening up the dialogue to the community as a whole. We had 2 guest speakers, Charlie Familliner, who's a retired HUD director and currently chairs the board of the Community Housing Partnership, and Bob Adams, who was in Richmond. He's the founder and senior advisor to Housing and Development Advisors in that area. They actually came to us and I tried to calculate, and it seems like approximately 90 years of experience between the 2 of them in the field of affordable housing. But their discussion was very enlightening, and it led us to several paths of proceeding. Number one, We need to find an established group with the same mission to glean information from. And a couple of possibilities were mentioned, such as agencies in Richmond, as well as a group in Charlottesville. And we will be reaching out probably to one of those very soon. Now, the other path is to work with representatives of our two other local jurisdictions as a joint effort in the housing topic, and open up conversations to the public to determine what they want. Do they want or feel the need that we need market rate housing, affordable housing, owner-occupied opportunities, rental opportunities, single-family or multifamily? There are just, a variety of decisions that would need to be made, and it was stressed to us that we probably should focus on maybe one or two things, but no more than that, because it just gets lost in the weeds. They suggested taking an inventory of our assets here in the area, such as what land do we have, or vacant land do we have? What are our financial resources, and even what are our human resources? Because all of those would be needed to, in order to be successful in a housing venture. Next, more importantly, engage with the business community. Who is in the business community that could become our partners in this process? Last, this is a good time, they feel, with the economy the way that it is, and that the needs of the all areas of Virginia. It's a good time to engage in this, because there is money available all over Virginia for housing. So at our next threshold meeting, which is next week, we will be digesting this wealth of information and advice and determine what the next step would actually be.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Any questions for those who are unable to attend the meeting? I appreciate planning and Threshold making the opportunity to embark upon this, and I think that one of the next steps certainly will, the regional study that's underway, in conversations anyway, underway, will complement that work. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
The Maury Service Authority has not met since our last meeting, and ongoing is the preparation of the implementation report that's due to be presented for what's to happen and the schedule for what's to happen at the water treatment plant. And other than that, there's no other information for the MSA.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. Tonight, as I had broadcasted at our last meeting, have two recommendations for your consideration for boards and commissions. One, as you know, Alicia Bostic stepped down in her role in the Community Services Board, and we have an application from Len Denicola, and I bring forward his name for your consideration. Len would be serving immediately with a term that would expire December 31st of 2023.
I move to appoint Lynn Denicola to the Community Services Board.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood.
I'll second.
Ms. Alexander is second. Have a motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries. Len, thanks for being here. No need to say anything, but we're grateful for your service moving forward. And for those of you who don't know, Len used to work at the Community Services Board in charge of the properties that the board has throughout the various communities. So acquainted with the staff as well as the facilities, and look forward to his service and his unique perspective from a property management standpoint in making the Community Services Board even stronger. So again, Thank you, Len. The other name I wanted to bring forward, and I apologize that I missed this, but Michelle Hentz has continued to serve on the Department of Social Services. Her term expired August 31st, and she would begin serving immediately with a 4-year term that would expire August 31st of 2025. And I would ask for council's consideration.
I move to appoint Michelle Hance to the Social Services Board.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Smith? Aye. Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler? Aye. Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. And that's all I have to report this evening. I call on the city manager.
Breathe a little better with that mask off. On a regional update on COVID, institutions of education, healthcare, and government have met on a routine basis to share information from our own unique perspectives about how we still see COVID today. And COVID cases are in decline, and all of us verified that typically we might see 0 or 1 cases, new cases on a regular basis, but it's very low. The one thing that was interesting that came out of the meeting is that most of the universities are seeing, and the hospital as well, very high cases of influenza A. There's apparently an outbreak occurring nationwide, and they're seeing it here. It's ahead of schedule for what you usually see in the flu season, and there's a variety of reasons for that, but they're watching it carefully. I had heard nothing that's any more virulent than in the past, but it's much more prevalent than we've seen in past years at this time. The budget season, aside from the flu season, the budget season is also starting. Staff now is working on their individual department budgets, and they will be submitting that to the finance director, Jen Bell, and she and I will be working to, of course, bring that before council after many more meetings and a lot more analysis sometime in the late winter or early spring. And the budget calendar is available to City Council and also on the city website. So if citizens want to see where we are and what we're doing in that process, it's available on our website. To touch on just a little more detail than Councilmember Strawn brought up, the consultant did also share with us that on the bike ped plan, they've had over 1,800 comments already on the survey from 700 distinct users. So we've gotten very good input on that survey. She also mentioned the stakeholder groups, and unfortunately that's not as positive. Out of 5 stakeholder committee groups scheduled, only 2 have been able to proceed because no participants have been willing to participate in those other stakeholder groups. Yeah, so 3 or so of those groups have not met yet, and they were supposed to meet this week. So we'll see what happens there. We might miss some input. As Mr. Harwood mentioned, we did have the pleasure of hearing the basketball game earlier this evening. I was informed by school staff late last week that that would be the case, that this meeting and the second meeting in December also have a basketball match scheduled while we are meeting. Based on that information, the difficulty of trying to move our meetings twice or 3 times within a period of, not be here tonight, come back, not be here, come back in January sort of thing, I think we can just sit that out, I'm afraid. I do agree with Mr. Harwood's comment. It's on my desk to get you a recommendation on the use of the county boardroom, and that may be a better option for a lot of reasons. But I think we just sit tight now. There are no other conflicts for the rest of the year here. We just have the 2 in November, 1 in November, 1 in December. October revenues, of course, we've received our revenue reports for the month of October, and they continue to be very strong. For the month, all major revenue categories were over or on budget. Month over month, sales tax revenues were up over 5.4% from this time in 2020. Meals tax revenues are 33% over budget, and lodging taxes exceeded budget by 50% in October. So all of our revenues are very strong, and of course those are some of our major revenues aside from property taxes. Utility revenues are trending positively and have met budget expectations. They're not as strong. We don't anticipate they'll be that strong, but they are meeting budget at this point. A few updates on the fire department. The department responded to several notable calls in the most recent 7 days. They assisted the Buena Vista Fire Department in fighting a 5-acre brush fire. They worked a senior apartment building fire in Glasgow and responded to a serious vehicle accident on I-81 that resulted in 1 fatality. Members of the department are working diligently to transition and upgrade all department reporting and call data to new records management system in the 911 center. This work is required due to the transition from our current dispatch and records management system to a new system. And as you understand, we've been ongoing, that transition has been ongoing for some months. Outdoor refreshment areas. Been some interest, some discussion of this for some weeks now. And people may or may not know that a recent bill was approved by the General Assembly to create opportunities for communities to establish outdoor refreshment areas. And these areas can be established in specific locations within the community and must be approved by the Virginia Alcohol Beverage Commission. If such an area is established, alcohol can be carried and consumed outdoors on public property or even on adjacent private property with the approval of the owner, of course. It's important to note that these activities are limited to 16 events per year. They can be multi-day events, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event, or it could be a Friday afternoon. These events have to be approved individually by the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission as well as City Council. The Main Street Lexington Director, Rebecca Logan, the Police Chief Green, and I are reviewing the rules and regulations for these districts, and we've met with the Virginia ABC to receive their guidelines. A recommendation may be forthcoming in the future as to the possibility of establishing a refreshment area in downtown Lexington, but no actual events are being proposed until such an area is actually approved by City Council and the ABC. So the first step is to put this area in place, this district in place, and then on a case-by-case basis discuss the pros and cons of any particular event in any specific area of that district. You don't have to use the whole district. You can have an event in one block of the district, and that would be entirely feasible and possible under the legislation and the district regulations as they currently are in place by the state. Yes, sir.
May I ask, does the establishment that sells the alcohol, do they have to be adjacent or within the district?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They have to be within or adjacent to the district. They do not have to participate if they do not choose to. If they do participate, they have to have a cup that's clearly labeled or have a logo as to the establishment where the drink was served. They cannot serve the drinks outside. They still have to serve them within their establishment, and the drinks can then be carried outside. This district does not require that streets be shut down, but of course that's a safety consideration at some level that the chief and Main Street Director and others are discussing to see in a case-by-case basis what might be the best way to proceed.
And have you given, have you guys given much thought to what that district would be? Would it be all of downtown? Would it just be Main Street or Main Street in Washington?
We have looked at a very extensive district downtown. Rebecca Logan believes, and I would concur, that making it as large as seems reasonable is the route to follow. Again, if there's an event that takes place, we don't have to propose or even approve that the whole district is used for the event. It could only be half. It could be just Main Street. It could just be Washington Street. It could just be around Hopkins Green, that area of Nelson and Jefferson, if there's an event at Hopkins Green. So it's a lot of flexibility there, but we feel like the first step is to give ourselves the flexibility to have the district in place and then evaluate events as they may be proposed.
Yeah, for instances, in looking at some of the boundaries, Salerno's is an outlier that may want to participate, and so having it go up to, for instance, I think it's Preston Street, to include them. It could be they're not participating for New Year's Eve, for instance, which is one event that was high anxiety for the Southern Inn and for the Gin and Juniper Lounge, as people were falling out into the street to watch the ball drop. Southern Inn, you can't take your drinks outside, but of course everybody wanted to take their drinks outside. This would allow for that type of atmosphere. So anyone that's coming downtown for the ball drop New Year's Eve, not this one, we don't have it in place, but conceptually in future years, we could block off Main Street, and then those restaurants on Main Street that I just mentioned, people could be served drinks, go out in the street, and not be breaking the law or risk the restaurants losing their ABC license with this opportunity, this plan. Thank you.
You're welcome, absolutely. Activities in public.
I'm sorry, related question. So if an event goes over 3 days, that just counts as one event, not 3 separate events?
I believe that's correct, yes. You can have a 3-day weekend event. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Wrong way then. Department of Public Works had their facilities inspected recently by OSHA, and they had 2 very minor items that they had to make some changes on. But overall, the facilities were in excellent safety conditions, so it's good news there. In the police department, the department was fortunate enough to make 3 conditional hires this past Monday. These individuals are not certified officers and only will become fully employed by the city once their police academy training is successfully completed. And that training runs from this January to the end of May of 22. At that time, they will then complete departmental field training and then be eligible for independent patrol activities next August. So it's a long process before we get those folks on the street. These new hires must also sign a 3-year contract with the city stipulating that if they leave before the 3 years is completed, they will pay the city a prorated portion of the cost the city paid to provide them with certifications. So we're trying to encourage them to stay. We want to give them the training. We don't want to be in a situation where we train them and then 6 months later they go to some other community making 20% more. We can't stop them from doing that, and good for them, I guess, if they have the opportunity, but we certainly like to recoup our expenses then. Command staff met with the Sons of Confederate Veterans to review plans for the annual event here in Lexington. Sergeant Paget and Chief Green met with several parties to explore possible support for the LPD mounted unit. Officers spent 17 hours on foot patrol within the community this past week, and the department just finished a community walk in Fairview Place earlier this evening. Oh, was it canceled? Okay, my apologies, thank you. And that is all I have this evening. If there's any more questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Just a few things going on in our fair city. Thank you for that update, City Manager. Any questions of the City Manager? Hearing none, I call on the City Attorney.
I have no report tonight, but am happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
About city business, I trust.
Well, all comers tonight.
Fair enough. Thank you, Jared. I'm not aware of any new business, and we have no closed meeting. I would point out at your place, at a minimum, a budget calendar that's been put together to remind you of the good work that Jen and Heidi and their team, Teresa, are doing every day, and the role you will play in April of this year. And unless there's any other business to come before council, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all for your patience, and especially members of the community for our conflict or competition with the basketball game. But I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving, and look forward to seeing you in December.